Today we are going to practice converting our metric units from one unit to another unit. Now, we already know the units that we use in the metric system, and we also already have an understanding of multiplying and dividing by the powers of 10. Today we are going to combine those two understandings to convert our metric units. Now, when I'm converting metric units, I want to always start by thinking back to my chart. And I specifically think to my prefixes and my phrase here. King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk signifies each prefix within my metric system that I will use. So what I do on my work is I go ahead and write down the first letter of each of these right away to help me remember and move and convert. So I'm going to go ahead and at the top of my paper write that. King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. So I like to either have my chart nearby or write that at the top of my paper every time. I will actually also write that for every single problem to make sure I know where I need to be. So we're going to go ahead and start with 7 centimeters. Okay. And I'm going from centimeters to meters. That means that my unit is getting bigger. A centimeter is smaller than a meter. So I'm going to go ahead and write out my letters. King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. Now, I start at centimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and underline where I start. I'm going to circle where I end. Meters is a base unit, so I'm going to circle that. Now, I take my centimeters, I take my pencil, and I go 1 space, 2 space. Centimeters is 2 spaces away from meters, so I take my centimeters, 7, my decimals at the end, and now I'm going to move the same way I did here. To get from centimeters to meters, I moved to the left and I moved 2 times. 1, 2. I put a 0 in that empty space. And my new answer is going to be 0 and 7 hundredths. In 7 centimeters, there are 7 hundredth meters. So I wrote out my letters and I used them to help me go from one unit to another. Let's go down here and try with our grams. Again, before I even get started, I want to go ahead and rewrite out King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. Kilo, hecto, deca, my base units, deci, centi, and milli. Here, I'm going to start at my grams, so I'm going to underline that, and I'm going to move to milligrams, so I will circle that. I start at my line, and I see how many jumps I need to make to get from grams to milligrams. Now I go ahead and rewrite my number. I don't change anything. The only thing that changes is I might need to add or take away zeros, and I'll move my decimal, but my numbers are not, these digits are not going to change. Okay, so to get from my grams to my milligrams, I jumped 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. My decimal's here, so I jump my decimal to the right, just like I did here. 1, 2, 3. Zeros go in its place, getting me 890,000 milligrams are in 890 grams. All right, let's do one more of these together. Again, I start off by writing King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. I start with my kiloliters. And I end with my base unit of liters. I have to jump 1, 2, 3 times to get there. I write my number out, 13, my decimals at the end, and my decimal, will move 1, 2, 3 times, which gets me a total of 13,000. in 13 kiloliters, there are 13,000 liters. This would be the very same if I had a decimal somewhere else. For example, if I had a decimal in between that 1 and 3, I would still move my decimal 3 times. One of my jumps would just include that 3. All right, let's go ahead and try a couple of word problems here. It says Rosie walked 18 kilometers today. And we want to know how many meters she walked. So I'm going to go ahead and note what I'm using here. All right, so again, I'm going to write King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. We start at kilometers. I end at meters. I move my jumps 3 times. I write my number. My decimal's at the end, so I move 1, 2, 3. That means if Rosie walked 18 kilometers, she walked 18,000 meters. Those are the same. So this is the same as this. So Rosie walked 18,000 meters. One more together. It says that a recipe calls for 336 grams of chocolate chips, and we want to know how many kilograms of chocolate chips that means are needed. So again, I can write out kilo, hecto, deca, my units, deci, centi, and milli. I go ahead and start at my grams and finish at my kilograms. I have to move 1, 2, 3 to get there. So I do the same with my number. My decimal's at the end because I don't have one elsewhere. And therefore, I move 3 to the left because that's what happened here. 1, 2, 3. I go ahead and place my decimal down, 336 thousandths. So I don't lose my decimal. I place a 0 before. The recipe needs 336 thousandths kilograms of chocolate chips.